recording and refresh my page to see if it posted. Okay. So it's not live yet. Like it hasn't officially appeared, but it's we're connected to it. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. I'm watching the YouTube channel
Yeah.
as
Oh,
well. On another.
I should share the I should do a share with so you can. Well, this might change. Well, you'll hear when I talk about it. Like I mean, I'm obviously because the only purpose of the live screen is just so everyone can see they want to see who we're talking about. But you'll hear
YouTube just went live
yeah.
just now.
Okay. So I'm muted. Okay, everyone. Only one person, which is Steven, there so far. I'm not expecting a giant audience. Although I did hit 60 subscribers today. I did my 50 subscriber celebration yesterday, and I'm at 60 already. So,
congratulations.
Thank you. So things are moving in the right direction. We'll wait till maybe 11:03 or 4 in case some people are going to pop on to view, so to speak, to get into the topic. So until then, we can just I'll bring up something relatively random per se, an entertainment topic, you know. So, were you or weren't you watching Rings of Prime?
I've not been watching anything. What I have been watching are reviews and reports from various people.
Yeah.
And just basically getting my mind wrapped around where people's heads are at and, what's going on in the conversation. And it's all the same stuff,
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that happened recently was the She-Hulk finale. I think that was probably the most interesting thing that's happened.
Oh, I have been
recently.
I have been black pilled on on Disney since they destroyed Obi-Wan.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, I've been black pilled on Star Wars since the middle film. What is it, Red?
The Last Jedi.
Death of Skywalker. What was it? What did they call it? Murdering Skywalker.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Last Jedi. Yeah. So I do have a topic
no,
we can.
I didn't even see the third one. I didn't even see the third one. I had no interest whatsoever.
I watched
the
it for pro forma purposes. You know what I mean? But it was hideous. You know, like I watched it to criticize it, basically. You know. But I do have a.
Yeah, I don't have any energy for that kind of stuff, man. I've got much more important things to do. But yeah, I would say that the biggest conversation I've been curious about is the She-Hulk finale conversation. I think that's a lot of people that haven't been entirely on one side or the other are basically have solidified their position because that episode quite literally told everybody that they've been trolling us all this time. On purpose. Like, they did it on purpose. They openly admitted and patted each other on the back for their efficiency of trolling the trolls.
But we knew that. You know what I mean? That's what.
I knew that. But, at one point in time, not that long ago, one could say I was a theorist. But as it turns out,
So I do have a musical topic that's kind of funny. We could talk about. Did you hear about this thing? Radio station deletes all Steel Panther after playing Glory Hole on air.
What?
You know who Steel Panther is, right?
No.
Okay.
They look like so many bands from the 80s and
So
early 90s.
they're a satirical glam band. Like they make fun of the glam concept. They're a comedian band, right? Okay.
Okay, so they're live action Spinal Tap, basically.
Well, Spinal Tap eventually became real musicians. I don't know if you follow them.
Well, they were real musicians at the time too. A lot of them were playing real instruments. I mean, they are extremely talented people.
Yeah, like this is Spinal Tap was a joke, but like a satire. But they eventually started going on tour and playing real music. You know, just like the Monkees. It started as sort of a comedy TV show, and for the next 30 years, the Monkees were a real band. You know.
Yeah.
So Steel Panther, for those who don't know, if you aren't old enough, the '80s was full of what's called hair metal and glam metal, and Steel Panther is a comedy band that sort of parodied that, right? So their music is satirical and comedic, right? So the article here, and as soon as I saw the title, I was laughing because it was predictable in our modern age, right? Radio station deletes all Steel Panther after playing song Glory Hole on the air. Now, we all know what a glory hole is. Oh, it was the hope we do it for adults, So, like what the word refers to, but
Yeah. And I wonder, why do they gender somebody in the song? Is that the problem? What happened? Because glory holes go both ways,
yeah. But the stay with the content of that song does not resonate with who we are as a radio station as individuals.
Right. No fun, no humor.
And they deleted all of the Steel Panther music, all of it, right?
That's a publicity stunt. One radio station. How many radio stations are there on the planet?
I mean,
there was hundreds when I was growing up. There's got to be thousands at this point.
Like some of the lyrics in this song, and I will keep it semi-clean, is, "Honey, I don't want to know who's bleeping my bleep today," or "I'm gonna blow my bleep at the glory hole, blow my bleep at the glory hole." But it's comedic, it's making fun of all these stupid like Cherry Pie. Remember that song, Cherry Pie?
Yeah.
She's my cherry
Frank
pie.
Sinatra too. Not Frank Sinatra. Frank Zappa as well. Frank Zappa was huge with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Where he would lampoon his own songs.
Yep.
But the quality level was through the roof. Of course.
Yeah. So okay. So I just find this sort of like there's no comedy in the world now. That's what it comes down to, But okay.
Spock and Hal don't understand comedy. I mean, they read a lot about it, but they really don't get it. Robots do not understand comedy, and I think that's the big problem.
Okay.
Whatever android species is currently running the planet has no room for humor.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So let's get into the topic here, Stephen. So the first band I'm bringing up is Metallica, they were my favorite band for a long time. Now they're my second favorite band. I found a band called Winter Sun a couple years ago, which has made the most perfect music I've ever heard. It's symphonic. It's like symphonic Finnish thrash / something, folk metal. It's the only way to describe Winter Sun. But Metallica. So they were formed in 1981. They have we'll go to the discography. It's down here somewhere. Here we go. So most fans who think of Metallica, they think of the first era of the band, which is Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets. Then Cliff Burton tragically died on the tour for Master of Puppets, and they came out with Injustice for All, which is kind of a Requiem album, a very dark place. Then they came out with their mainstream breakthrough album, which it's the Black Album, but for some stupid reason they keep calling it the self-titled album in the charting people, right? And then after that, they did what many people would consider their art albums, which was Load and Reload. Then after that, you had the sort of modern era, the last 20-year era of Metallica with Saint Anger, Death Magnetic, and Hardwired Self-Destruct. They've never
Did they ever change their tone?
Well, they changed. Okay, the first three albums are the classic thrash metal, like pure classic. Like if you explain someone what thrash metal is, like you just play one of those three albums, especially the second one to me, which to me, Now, Injustice for All sounds. Who would be an example who you might know? If you took
just give me an idea.
If you took,
did it get more orchestral?
It got less thrashy and more like the whole concept of, there's a big debate in the fandom over speed metal versus thrash metal, like which is which and all that, or is there a difference and they're just two sides of the same coin? Justice became less thrashy and more pure speed. It was just anger, just aggression, but without that sort of roughness that made it thrash metal, kind of how Megadeth sounds, basically, if you want to think of it. Then Metallica, the Black Album, was basically, it's like Black Sabbath without the blues. If you took the blues element out of Black Sabbath, that's how Metallica, the self-titled Metallica album sounds. Load and Reload are very almost rock albums. They have some heavy songs and some lighter rock songs and ballads, but it's really an art album. Like they wrote 20 or 30 songs and just put them out there because Metallica kept going through eras where they didn't think they could repeat be as good as what they wrote in the past, so they kept trying to experiment with new stuff. That's why the Black Album came out. That's why Load and Reload came out. That's why Saint Anger came out, and that's why Death Magnetic was the first time, I believe, when I think Rick Rubin said to them, "Look, you guys have mastered this thrash stuff. Just play something like that again." And Death Magnetic was almost a throwback to the first three albums in terms of sound. It was very thrashy, and Hardwired to Self Destruct was similar to Death Magnetic. So Death Magnetic and Hardwired aren't as thrashy as the first three, but they're a little faster and heavier than Injustice for All and Metallica, if you think of the tiering of the sound. Now, also in accordance to that, as I said, Cliff Burton died in 86 or 87. He was technically the second bass player for Metallica. There was a guy named Ron who was their bass player for a year or two before they joined up. After him, Jason Newsted joined the band for about 15 years, and now Robert Trujillo became their bass player. He's been their bass player for about 20 years. Cliff Burton is probably the best bass player in history, like you ever heard. There's no way he was so amazing as a musician. The lead guitar stayed the same since Kirk Hammett came in after they kicked Dave Mustaine out. Dave Mustaine is the founder of Megadeth. The drummer Lars and singer James Hetfield have been in the band since the beginning, and so their alignment for the past 20 years has stayed the same. Their sound has evolved back to something closer to their original sound. So that's the summary of Metallica. Now, my statement on should they stay or should they go, I've thought Metallica should because James is a great guitarist, and he used to be a great lead singer. He's only a good lead singer now. I think his voice has caught up with him because he's almost 60. I've thought for the past 10 and 15 years they should recruit a younger vocalist who can do all the ranges of their songs, and let James sit back on the guitars. So
okay.
Just because you as a singer trying to do that raspy sound, he can't yell like he used to. You know what I mean? Like he can't do when you metal, you have to kind of be able to like grind it out sometimes, and you can hear it when he's singing, like when he does like Master of Puppets live, for example. It's just not the same as it used to be. So my comment is they should make a change up. In other words, they can still produce relevant music that's good, but I think the vocals need to be changed to reflect the fact that the singer's voices just go after a certain point. So
yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
That's still. I remember when was it Van Halen that did that, where they recast the lead singer because David Lee Roth kind of just stepped out of fashion with them, or something.
That we could bring them up later. Basically, Valley Bertinelli.
Lead singer.
Yeah, because they kicked David Roth out of the band.
Right.
Valley Bertinelli, who was Eddie Van Halen's wife, he's passed away now. She's a head case, and basically, I'm not going to blame and say who's who. There was financial arguments, but basically, they kicked David Roth out of the band, got Sammy Hagar, who has a entirely different voice. Then they kicked Hagar out of the band, 5-10 years later, even after their awful Carnal Knowledge album, which was a pretty good album. It was their biggest album, I think, ever. Then they kicked him out of the band and got the guy from Extreme. You remember the song More Than Words? More Than Words, yeah. I can't remember his name, but he was the lead singer for Van Halen for like one album. Then they kicked him out, brought David Lee Roth back for about an hour, kicked him out again. Got another guy, and now they're obviously with Eddie Van Halen being dead. They pretty much they still do a they tried to do a Van Halen tribute concert, but then that didn't go over well.
Gary Sharon? Was it Gary Sharon?
I think that's his name.
That they brought in as the lead singer?
Yeah, I think that's his name. Yeah. Gary something. I don't remember if it's Sharon, but Gary Sharon. Sounds right. And so, Van Halen's done because Eddie Van Halen is dead. You can't do Van Halen without Eddie Van Halen. You just can't. Even though his kid's a great guitarist, Wolfie is not Eddie,
Yeah, to me, this is, it sounds bizarre. I'm not really an enthusiast in Metallica, but at that point, if you change the lead singer, isn't it basically just trademarking. I mean, why keep the title of the band if the band as is no longer a band because they brought in another singer? I mean, I get it's not like it's Metallica Orchestra and where band members have come and gone over the course of the whole thing without a fatality being involved.
Well, I mean, Journey has changed their lead singer 3 times. AC/DC's done it now 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I
Black
get
Sabbath,
that, but
yeah.
it was more because they were changing their sound, or because it was a business agreement, or
Not
or
for
it was a disagreement within the band structure itself. But it wasn't because somebody couldn't sing anymore.
I see what you're saying, but I mean, you know, we've heard other. I'm okay with a newly, like I said, Metallica. I don't listen to them for James's voice. I listen to them for their music per se, like the totality of it. I can hear other people covering Metallica songs and still enjoy them. Not as much as I've heard could hear Metallica do it, obviously, right? But so I don't know if they're ever going to do another new album. They might be past that point now because they have been word to come out that they plan on retiring at some point in the next 5 to 10 years. I think that and I mean, if you look at the time between the albums, it was 1 year between Load and Reload, but they were at the same time. Then like 4 or 5, 6 years to Saint Anger, 5 or 6 years to Death Magnetic, then 8 years to Hardware Self Destruct. So I think we're on a downward spiral with them producing new music to begin with. So them continuing as a legacy act, which is what I'm saying, just get a singer who can actually sing all the music so you can hear the variety of it and not have James' voice is what to me it's more of a rock singer voice now than a metal singer.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Okay, so you're up, Steven.
Well, I'm going to bring out my heaviest gun because I think we could talk about this one for a while. I don't even know what their current status is. As a matter of fact, let me just go ahead and look it up.
Well, give me the name and I'll look
The
it
Rolling
up.
Stones. I don't understand. I don't know why the Rolling Stones would ever, why they would continue to perform.
Okay, so let's give a summary. Rolling Stones formed in 1962. They're one of the all-time classic, like 60s rock bands. Many of whom, and Mick Jagger is the most famous person from the band. They've been around for decades. How many albums do we have here? It's so big that you have to like have a separate article. There's a lot. I'm scrolling past like 15 or 20 albums.
I'm just looking at the different record companies that have carried them. It's got to be like a half dozen all by themselves.
Yeah.
The number of record companies that have carried them, it's almost ridiculous.
Now I know the Stones because my aunt and mom were hippies, so they listened to them a lot when I was a kid. I was never a fan of like that particular rock sound. I liked it, but I always gravitated to heavier stuff or progressive stuff, even as a kid. So I know a lot of Rolling Stones songs that I enjoy. I mean, a Startup, all the big hits, and when they come on the radio, I'm good with it. But Mick Jagger to me hasn't sounded top level as a singer since like the '80s. They came out with that Steel Wheels in the '90s or whatever that album. I think it was the '90s.
Yeah, just after they entered the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
which was in '89.
Yeah, and I was like,
they solidified as an act of themselves at that point. They were doing the Rolling Stones, like, you know what I mean? It's like everybody was so super celebrity that it was almost. I don't even know how many. Sometimes they would do new songs. Sometimes they would just do covers of their own songs. But they basically went on stage to pay for their next castle, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I mean, if they had just been a legacy act that would go on tour every summer or whatever, I think I would have been like that. That's the third thing. It was, should they quit? Should they change up, or should they just become a legacy act that does tours for the fans or whatever to make a little money and all that?
Yeah, there's a third option, and the third option is for them to become like Peter Gabriel, where he's no longer performing; he's just pouring money and studio capabilities at up and coming new talent.
Well, the reason I mention the artists is it's nice to still be able to hear those songs live. Like, for example, another band out there, Leonard Skinner. Uh, I mean, you know the story behind that band, Stephen, the tragedy and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they came back. I don't know, about 10 years after that with Ronnie's little brother Michael, who looks and sounds identical. Some other family members, some of the other performers who died, and some people recovered, and still had a 20, 30 year career of, as a legacy act, going around performing their classic hits. And they did produce a couple new albums too, which were okay. But I was like, that type of thing I'm kind of okay with, because they were just a legacy act. You got to hear the music played again by not.
Yeah, and there was something cathartic because there was actually a death.
Yeah.
And so it was almost a memorial of a tribute.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. But like the Rolling Stones, though, I mean,
well, Mickey's still with us, so when one of them dies, then this question will be answered, and they're probably darn close. I mean, no bad shade. May they live forever and ever and ever and become artificial intelligence and continue to live on forever, like The Simpsons or Futurama, where they're just Mick in a jar, but. They are. He's 79 years old, for crying out loud.
Yeah, Ronnie Wood's 75. Well, Keith Richards, my aunt says he's pickled. That's why he's still alive. The drugs just pickled him.
God bless them that they can still get up there and do it. At all.
Yeah.
But at what point does it become? Because we're probably going to come across this again and again and again. At what point does it stop being the Rolling Stones?
That's the entire point of this what we're talking about. Like and I'm not saying they could still be a legacy act and just perform their classic hits and maybe do a new song every so often or whatever.
Right, like the Tony Bennett kind of thing, and there's a lot of those Vegas stars are just there to do their covers and reminisce, and it's almost like a coping meeting almost, where everybody can get together and still see them. Don't worry, don't panic. They're still available.
Well, but the energy of the band to create something new and meaningful for the Stones has left a long time ago.
Right.
And sometimes it's because of death, like Alice in Chains when Lane Staley died. They're still a good band. I mean, when Jerry was on his own, now with this lead singer who's a pretty good singer, you can still listen to Alice in Chains and enjoy them. But the energy they had with Lane and Jerry and Mike Inez all singing together with those triple vocals, gone. They couldn't get that back.
Well, interestingly enough, I'm gonna give it over to you for your next one on your list. But we did have a tribute Beatles band, and it was actually kind of a franchise of a thing. Do you remember that? I forget, it was like Meet the Beatles or the Beatles Live or something, but they had where they were not the Beatles.
Yeah. Well,
they were performing like the '60s Beatles songs, like as a tribute.
Yeah. Well, here this leads into my next band, which Queen. Queen is my third favorite band. So it's Winter Sun. I mean, my top five, but Winter Sun's the favorite now because of the premier musicality. And then there's Metallica, Queen, Nightwish, and Alice in Chains. Basically, you're rounded out. And Queen, obviously, the tragedy of Freddie Mercury's death and all that, that's given. But Queen is probably the most talented band of musicians ever assembled who's not a symphony orchestra.
Right.
The drummer for Queen, Roger Taylor is the bassist. His name escapes me right now. But the drummer for Queen is a better singer than 99% of singers in every other band ever. He has such a high, whatever the male, is it a falsetto, the male version of a soprano or something? Whatever it's called.
It's a high falsetto, maybe a low alto, which is not a low alto. What is it for the female? The soprano, but there's another one in between that.
I know there's soprano, like mezzo soprano. I don't remember all the terms, to be honest.
Right, with the lowest tone that a female voice.
Yeah.
Which anatomically a female's voice.
Yeah.
Has difficulty hitting super low.
Yeah.
notes, and so
Yep.
that's where the divide happens with the male and female voice.
Yeah.
And yes, there are a few people out there that made whole careers out of their ability to hit really high notes. I forget there was a 60s, 50s, 60s musician that did it. Was it Bobby Darin or one of those guys
Yeah.
that had an insanely high voice?
Mm-hmm. Well, the musician, the lead singer for Nightwish, the current lead singer, Floor Jansen, she is the best lead singer, best singer on the planet to me since Pavarotti. She's a female Pavarotti in terms of vocal abilities. You know, you should listen if you ever listen to Nightwish or not. You should try give them a shot because they have some, especially with Floor. When Floor joined the band about 10 years ago, because she's the third singer. Like their first singer
What was
was
the name of him again?
Nightwish. Nightwish has inspired. You remember Metallica did their S&M concert with the symphony? That invented what's called symphonic metal, and Nightwish is the biggest
Okay.
symphonic metal band, you know. And Thomas, who's their, I guess you would say that the front man, the core of the band who writes all the music and all that, he's like a classical composer. Like all the music is, very, like elite level in terms of. It's not just like like hey baby, let's go to the bar. I mean it's symphonic, it's folk, there's a huge range of influence in there. But if you give them a shot, I mean they're really entertaining to listen to, especially live. Like go to Nightwish live and watch their live YouTube performances, and you really get some good stuff out of that. But back to Queen, who was my post Freddie, they've been doing like the Queen, and they changed their name. Like they're not saying we're Queen, they're the Queen Experience, and they've had a couple of fill-in singers. One of which was that guy from American Idol, Adam something, I think.
Okay.
He's got a good voice. He can sing most of the Queen songs. There's never gonna be another Freddie. I mean, there's no,
Right.
But Queen did it right to me. They kept, they didn't get it because there was no replacing Freddie Mercury. I'm trying to think of any singer I could think of, a male singer who could have legit replaced him, and I can't. I mean, even guys like like Corey Taylor from Slipknot, he has an incredible range. I can't see him. I can't see him fronting Queen to make Queen a regular band again. Or there's something unique about Freddie's vocal, not just his singing ability, but his performing ability. That just made it special. So they're now a legacy act that does. They've done a little bit of new music with the guy once in a while, but nothing crazy. And now they've released the reason they came on my list. They dug out an old track. Although Brian May once said we have about 10 or 15 albums of completely recorded, completely edited, unreleased Queen music. So we could if we wanted to just keep putting out Queen albums, with Freddie singing on all of them. It's like but they said when we retire the band, we'll probably just put them out as a mega catalog so people can listen if they want to, But that was like Prince. Prince supposedly in his vault had 20 to 30 albums of music that he didn't feel that by people saying by anyone else's standard they're great albums, but by his standards they were crap, so he won't release them. But, yeah.
Yeah, at that point, because remember when we had the re-edit of Elvis Presley?
Yeah.
And how that became like super, super popular. But it was basically just everybody knew it was a fake because he's not alive, right? Mm-hmm. It's a stolen, not stolen footage, but it's almost like a found media at that point.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's fascinating and maybe even charming and intriguing, right? There's some charm to the whole thing because it's kind of magical that their voice still exists in this form, but it's still a little necrophiliatic,
Yeah, I get that sense that you got to be real careful when an artist is dead. Like what is continuing the legacy of the artist. Excuse me, everyone. I'm just a little tired today. Sorry for my yawning on camera. It's been weird. I mean, I think the weather, like we were saying before off camera, is making me feel tired than usual. But it's been weird when you get like just not music related, James Earl Jones has officially retired as the voice of Darth Vader, but
Right.
he did something with there's a computer program that he worked with the computer program for the last couple of Vader projects, so they could duplicate his voice for Vader because he wants Vader to continue with his voice. He wants that, you know.
Right.
So in that case, I'm
He
okay
does.
with it because he worked with he worked. The guy's 95 years old. Oh my God, you know.
Yeah.
But wow.
Yeah. Well, it was generous of him to make the effort to make sure
Yeah.
that the whole thing was right, in much the same way that it's Ian McKellen coming back for Gandalf for the Hobbit series
Yeah.
was a generous thing to do. I think his wife talked him into it, not James Earl Jones. He was already committed, but Ian McKellen came back as Gandalf because he said, I understand, honey, what you're getting at, but the fans are just not going to understand at all. And it was because of his wife's plea that he did the Hobbits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's true, we wouldn't have understood. We would have been like, what happened? I don't know. Why? Why would you do that?
Well, then again, I mean, the Hobbit films are so problematic that, I wouldn't like.
Yeah, that's true. He probably felt like he wasted his time considering what they turned out to be. But God bless him, he made his money, and that's all I care about. Is that he walked away with some bank.
I point this out to people, by the way. If you know how to get fan edits of films, there's a fan edit of The Hobbit, which is very watchable. It's about 3.5 to 4 hours long. Of all three films, they got out a lot of crap out of it, So
right.
Yeah. So I think it's your turn, Stephen, for a musician.
Yes. Yeah, because you brought up
Queen.
You brought up Queen as your second.
Yeah.
Let's see now. Because I'm not really listening to a lot of music these days, but I guess I want to bring up Elvis Presley.
There we go. So this is a king.
And it as almost as a model of what the potential is of a legacy voice in hindsight.
Yep.
Because we lost him a little too soon, but he was kind of magically right on the cusp of being old news.
Yeah, he
You
died.
know what I mean?
Yeah, so he died in
He died
1977.
right at that point where he was losing faith with the fans. He was becoming kind of a bit of a joke of himself. There was a lot of conversation about whether or not he should proceed. And then something really magical happened because of the fatality. Tributes of him became almost as popular.
Yeah.
And there's now a legion of Elvises out there.
Yep.
Doing Elvis. And that's unique. That's a unique thing, but that is the future of a lot of these bands because these companies and these estates are not going to let go of these properties. If you are one of the fans of Metallica saying they should switch up the lead singer so we can continue to hear them live because they still play great guitar and they're still good musicians, which is true. They could probably play to the dying day because playing guitar is not the same thing as singing.
Yeah.
Elvis Presley is actually a perfect model. It's actually a legacy story of how this could work out if done right.
Yep. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, Elvis, sadly, he never got. Cause I don't know all the story, like what was true and what wasn't true near the end of his life. Like there's a whole old Elvis who had that crooner voice more than like the different than the rockier voice he had when he was kid Elvis. So the question was Elvis really trying to get his life together and just couldn't, and then that's what happened, or so by dying did he lose his chance for that to get his act together and have that second life, that second later part of your career, like Ozzy Osbourne had, for example. He still struggles with substance abuse, but he got himself after he had the second life after he got kicked out of Black Sabbath, and he had a good career in the 80s, early 90s, and then he still had stuff coming out, but I think he had to go through substance abuse treatment again, and then had a couple more, like Sharon knows how to manage him. You know what I mean? She knows how to get Ozzy well enough to go up there, because his voice, even though he's like 65 and might as well be pickled like what's his face in Rolling Stones was, but he still sings. I heard, like, if you listen to the songs that were just released, his voice is still pretty good. So for being an actor,
Well, I'm not surprised either. I'm
yeah,
not surprised at
you know,
all.
I mean,
It's interesting to note that Elvis Presley is also an example of the industry wrestling with whether or not to stop these guys from substance abuse,
yeah,
because the industry was kind of in the substance abuse age.
oh,
The writing room at Saturday Night Live was filled with alcohol and
yeah,
all sorts of substances.
oh, it got
So
so
it
bad,
was
like,
almost part of the media into the
yeah.
80s.
Well, even today, like Lane Staley died from drugs. The guy from Stone Temple Pilots died from drugs. You know,
Yeah, Stone Temple Pilots is my go-to for that
yeah,
story, because
yep,
it was a tragedy to lose him the way, he fell off the wagon and couldn't get really back on, and he
yeah.
was
Scott
never the
Weiland,
same
yep,
afterwards.
yep. And even a legacy of drugs, like the dude from Soundgarden and all that little side band Audio Slave. Um, I believe he committed suicide. And that was probably a legacy of mental health issues and drug abuse.
Wasn't In Excess
He died, I
also
think, from
another one
drugs.
that
Yeah.
did that?
So that's going to be, in fact, that might be our next topic on Grumpy. You're not so old man, Stephen. Musicians who died before their time due to substance abuse.
Well, how about celebrities? Because I think it's an interesting topic that shouldn't be just kept to the rock star motif.
Yeah.
It goes across
Oh yeah.
everything, including big business. We've had several fatalities in big business that were substance related because it was just they got too big for their own britches.
Yeah, but I mean, I hate to say it this way, but people who work regular jobs, we're replaceable if we die from substance abuse. Like a musician or an athlete or whatever, their contribution in terms of like the unique value of it is not replaceable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one could suggest that a character like Howard Hughes is kind of the person I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Where he was a captain of his own industry, and he fell to whatever was actually going on in his life at that time. He just couldn't.
Oh yeah, he was a genius.
In line, and whatever he was doing, because the story is so muddy at this point with lore that it's hard to know what was really going on.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've got this whole crazy theory that the government asked him to help on a project, and it freaked him out so much that he became obsessed with viruses, because he may have learned a little too much about the reality of viruses.
Howard Hughes it's an area of like you would call it paranormal lore. That's a whole area of paranormal of stories and like I guess they'd call them. Yeah, Tesla's him squared. Because Tesla was a genius scientist, and you can read Tesla's work. Despite I want to relate this to people out there. Okay, we know how Tesla did everything he actually did because he wrote it down because he was a scientist, right?
Right, and it was photographed as well.
Yeah.
But
so
Howard Hughes, on the other hand, went into mystery land every once in a while,
Yeah.
and we lost track of him for months at a time, where we didn't know what he was doing. And talk about a history of a celebrity that is just ripe with the possibility of fan fiction about his life. I mean, God only knows what he was doing, working on a time machine for all we know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, that guy was so mysterious, he could have been working on anything. UFO projects, whatever. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, totally get what
And
you're
that
saying there.
may have spooked him out. I think that's what did it to him, because he was intelligent enough to know the ramifications of some research projects. And he may have stumbled onto something where he just got so spooked that he couldn't talk himself out of it anymore.
Well, this is way off the rails, but
Yes.
I'll bring up another guy, Buddy Lazar, I think his name is, or Bob Lazar, something like that.
Yes.
The elite level engineer, like there are a lot of scientists who claim they've seen and worked with UFOs, but they're like like they got a master's degree and have no reputed reputation. This guy Bob Lazar, whatever his name is. Bob Lazar. He was an elite level engineer and scientist before this even happened. Like, so there's no way they could. Now, I'm not saying UFOs are real or that he really saw UFOs. He's not even sure he really saw UFOs. Okay, but they couldn't smear him because his credentials were impeccable. You know what I mean? He had a government security clearance better than most generals in the military. You know,
Right.
so when they pulled him into that project that they could pull scientists in, and he said, "Oh, these things look like they could be flying." You know, I'm simplifying it. You know, so that's the type of thing of the type of person we're talking about. You know, Howard Hughes. Whatever. So a whole legendarium comes up around these people because they say what they say, and you can't talk down Howard Hughes because of all the stuff he did that was genius. You know,
Right. Yeah, because he's actually a genius on record.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
You know. So.
And not only just an engineering genius, Howard Hughes,
Yeah.
but he actually made a whole Hollywood career work too, on top of a drilling company for the oil industry.
Mm-hmm.
So like, this guy is like Reed Richards level, like Elon Musk, like holy cannoli.
Yeah. But okay, so you went with
So I did. I mentioned Elvis Presley because we've been talking about legacy bands,
Yeah.
and the legacy of Elvis Presley still exists to this day. There's young versions, old versions, halfway versions, Latino versions.
Yeah.
It's all over the map. The Japanese guys gotten on board, and same with the Koreans and the Chinese. It's all over the map.
Do you remember that Nicolas Cage movie with the flying Elvises?
Yeah, exactly.
And those are apparently a real thing. Elvises who parachute and sing in mass or whatever, you know. So a couple of my other bands we actually kind of talked about, like Ozzy Osbourne, for example. So I'll bring up the next one, which is Journey. I think you probably heard of Journey, I'm sure.
Definitely heard of Journey.
Yep. So they've been around since the '60s. If you had to tell anyone what does classic rock sound like, you play Journey for them. They're the most iconic sounding classic rock band you could think of. They found 3 lead singers now who can sing identically. Yeah, I know you can say one sounds a little different. And Arnel Pineda, the current singer, he is the most talented of all the singers. If you ever listen to him sing other stuff that's not Journey songs, dude's amazing, right? But they've canned their sound for decades. Now the reason I put them on my list though, and this is the reason I think they should quit, is because there's a huge dispute going on between older members of the band. Like Arnel, he's their lead singer, but he's hired to be their lead singer. So the only he's not part of the Journey Corporation that controls the band. And the only time he gets any sort of ownership credit on any of the new songs they would write that he would be involved in, so to speak. So I'm saying they should quit because even though they could still play that sound, the fact that they're undergoing lawsuits now to see who should have that sound, to me means I don't want to hear it. If you're going to be a legacy act and go out and perform, you can have your drama, but don't make it break up the band. I don't want to hear.
To be honest with you, I can't believe that they're not co-owning the property at this point, because it's like, everybody should be able to play Journey. Okay, you've agreed. What is the harm of 2 bands being Journey? We have multiple acts happening simultaneously on the earth as we speak of the Blue Man Group.
Yeah.
No one believes that there's only one Blue Man Group. There are now multiples of the Blue Man Group. And a band like Journey, I don't particularly, when I think of Journey, I do not think of a celebrity. I think of the band and the sound. Like Chicago.
Yeah.
I don't think of a single celebrity in Chicago.
I guess in that regard, that would make sense then if you were the Journey Corporation. Let Steve Perry have his own Journey band, just so they can pump money into the corporation and play the songs.
And he can profit from Steve Perry songs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let him keep his part of the catalog and perform them.
Or
why not?
Yeah.
More money for everybody.
A band going through that now, and I would disagree a little bit on this, is a different Heart. The Wilson sisters have decided to have their own separate Heart bands. Now,
well, that's a totally different story because I know who you're talking about. When you mention the Wilson sisters, I know them as individual singers. So it's an entirely different thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to me, what makes them special, they have great talent to begin with, but but
Hmm.
when they're together, they're hard. Like you need to hear both sisters singing, and one of them with that great that sort of
Yeah.
she's
Well,
not an
that Simon
elite
and
level
Garfunkel.
guitarist, but she has a unique sound to it. You know what I mean? You could hear when she's playing. You know, because she
Simon and
plays.
Garfunkel were a duet, so when Paul Simon split off and became Paul Simon, it kind of pissed off Garfunkel because he couldn't make his own solo act work,
Yeah.
which is kind of the same thing that happened to George Harrison, but he was much better at it, of course. The
Well,
Beatles were talented enough to make that work.
yes and no. I would say the Beatles were talented. I I like I think the Beatles were great songwriters, but really good musicians. You know what I mean? Like they were better than the collective sum of their parts because their songwriting was incredible. You know
Right,
what I'm saying?
right.
But every Beatles song I've ever heard covered, I preferred the cover to the Beatles singing it or performing it. Just because I am not overly impressed by most of their individual musical capability, but
Interesting.
I love, I love their songwriting. It's just so amazing songwriting. It's just, you know, it just they don't sound. I think if their songwriting had been crappy, the Beatles wouldn't have been the big band. It would have been who? What was the other? There were two or three bands that came over with them in the British invasion, weren't there? Um,
But they were happening at the same time.
yeah, I think one of the other bands would have been
Not
the
like
Beatles.
them.
Yeah,
There was something playful. There was something snarky about the Beatles that was solely unique to them
because their
when they first
songwriting is
came out.
their songwriting is way ahead of the era of music, the complexity of the music of that era. I mean,
But and it was their personalities
yeah,
too.
yeah,
They were natural caricatures of themselves.
yeah. That I'm totally in on. I just think they weren't great singers or instrument players per se
Right,
compared to
right.
yeah, um,
Yeah, I've heard this argument. I'm not a musician, so I wouldn't even have the ears for it.
yeah,
All I know is that that sound is embedded in my bones because I listened to it when I was a very little boy when it was first coming out. When and I heard it after they were already gone. I wasn't even born.
yeah. See the
I was
band.
born like in the last months of their career. So
And see, to me, I mean, I said my aunts were hippies, my mom was hippie. That I grew up with the Beatles, but the band I judge everyone against is Queen. You know, Queen is a
that's
far more
interesting.
talented band than the Beatles in terms of music capability. There's no
That
no one's going to dispute that. But unfortunately for Queen, there were head cases. I mean, that's the real reason Queen never broke big in the U.S. They could never agree. If you go read like a lot of the sort of Queen in the '70s about the inner workings of the band and all that sort of stuff, like
hmm
like they would write all the songs separately and fight over which ones to get on the albums. The first album Queen wrote together was the Highlander soundtrack.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess that would also
and
include Flash Gordon.
yeah, which one came out first? I don't remember which one came. But if
Flash Gordon, I think, came out just
yeah,
before
when
Highlander, or right around the same
yeah,
time.
so when they wrote A Kind of Magic, I was reading interviews and Freddie was saying, "I've never had this before. We none of us we knew how awesome it was to write all these songs together and not fight over which of our songs get on the album so we can get paid. We all get paid now
Yeah.
because all of us own all the songs." And just
And
when
the
they
Beatles had some of that in the end, but that's when they
yeah,
were starting to have issues anyway,
yep,
period. But
oh
they
yeah,
had been around since the early 60s, so
yeah,
it's almost acceptable that they went
yeah,
that way.
yep, and it was just so so we're talking about Journey with these bands, and it's like how do I put it? Well, let's just finish up on the Beatles. I like George Harrison as of all four of them. The one whose music I liked solo most was George Harrison.
Yeah, I agree with
You
you on
know,
that one.
he maybe
Although
because
I am a big fan of Paul McCartney's Band on the Run. Well, not Band on the
oh
Run,
yeah,
but what, Eagles? No, what
the
was the name of the band?
Wings,
Wings, that was it.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, again, he's. I'm not saying he was a horrible. He was a good musician. He just wasn't a
Yeah,
great.
and he kept it
Yeah,
together the
yeah,
longest too. He was
yep,
performing well into and
yeah,
as the same identity of Wings.
yeah, yep,
So,
yeah,
but when George Harrison did the Traveling Wilburys, we really found out how talented all those guys really were. But we were living in a different age.
Yeah.
They were all reinventing themselves simultaneously because this was right around the same time that many of them were joining the Hall of Fame. Many of them were becoming financially viable for the first time since their careers fell
Yeah.
apart.
Yep.
I mean, Ringo Starr was a stockbroker, and Yoko Ono was his, budding assistant almost. And that changed the whole music industry. The whole landscape transformed after
Well,
that.
they had no clue about no one. Very few musicians from the 40s, 50s, and 60s had any idea about the business side of it. That's why they lost all their music rights. You know.
Yep.
And this is a controversial topic for Beatles fans. I explain to them all the time. The only reason the Beatles' original recording exists is because Michael Jackson spent billions of dollars of his own money preserving music that was just rotting away in warehouses. So he bought the rights to it and to preserve it. And then there were and people were like, well, why when he was selling the rights to the music? Because he's spending billions of dollars. It wasn't just Beatles music. It was he was buying whole warehouses of rotting tapes and having them remastered to preserve them. He wanted to preserve the music that was decaying. And when it came out that he owned the Beatles music, and they were like controversial, I was like, Paul McCartney is a freaking billionaire. And Michael said to him, just pay me what I spent on it, and I'll give it back to you. And McCartney wouldn't pay for it. And it was like such a, leaving aside legal accusations with Michael Jackson, which
right. Yeah, there's no reason to get into any of that.
Yeah, the guy is one of the all-time great musicians, and he was dedicated to preserving music, and he was one of the few musicians from that time that understood that this stuff was valuable. That, not in terms of money, but historical value. And I remember just loosely compare. You know how many like missing Doctor Who episodes are because BBC didn't care about them? Other TV shows from that era,
I know.
The U.S. George Lucas.
The Doctor Who legacy all by itself.
George Lucas spent a lot of his own money preserving the old serials and old movies. Not the obviously the mainstream stuff is always going to be preserved, but there were thousands and thousands and thousands of movies and TV shows that Lucas had preserved that was just rotting away,
I think Coppola did a lot of that as well. Coppola was into a lot of that stuff.
Well, I think he worked on it, but Lucas spent his money on it. You know what I mean? Michael Jackson spent their money on it. These were rich guys who didn't just sit on their nest egg and like Scrooge McDuck and swim through it.
They weren't restoring ancient aircraft or something like that, or restoring some 1930s yacht or some nonsense. They were restoring their legacy, which and you know what? He may have just like George Lucas, they eventually wound up turning it into an industry of film restoration.
Yeah.
And audio restoration, like they were inventing technologies to make sure that never happened again. Better storage devices, better tape. They invented multiple technologies.
With the way digital works now, presuming that they really have archives that are in space now, which is rumored but not true. Like I heard a rumor of about 10 years ago that the U.S. government has they boosted a bunch of satellites up there that just are giant hard drives. They just beam the data up there so that it can't be destroyed on the ground. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know if that's true or not. But
I could assure you that there are probably bunkers where some Smithsonian society is archiving everything and doing it solely for that purpose as a
that I know.
time capsule.
But that could still be destroyed by events here on the surface of the Earth. If you want to preserve it, you have to get off planet, so to speak. At least a better chance of it.
Yeah, that sounds a little extreme, but okay. How
I
do you
mean,
get it back?
Realistically, that those discs they put on Voyager 1 and 2, 100,000 years from now, that might be the only evidence humanity ever existed.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep.
Whose turn was it? I think it's yours.
Well, you just brought up Journey, which is how we got onto the Beatles, was through the Journey thing.
Yeah.
And I mentioned Chicago during that conversation as well. But I don't really know off the top of my head any other bands.
Oh, I have more. I was
maybe the Eagles. I guess
Eagles have been a legacy act for 20 years. Here's one for you.
Right.
Here's an interesting one. Okay, there's a band called Anthrax. They're kind of a thrash metal type band, right? Well, they have two different sounds. Okay, because they had two different lead singers. Besides that first guy who was just a filler. which was Joey Belladonna and John Bush. And John Bush is famous for his own band, Armored Saint. Now, by the way, people, Armored Saint has the best album covers of all time. Just go look. Metal fans know what I'm talking about. They're these beautifully drawn pictures of armored saints, So, but anyway, so John Bush, after Belladonna, I think it was drugs, he got kicked out of the band, and then John Bush joined, and John Bush sings. What's the sound for it? Who would you have known? He's like, okay, so Belladonna is a very standard thrash style singer, like Hetfield, for example, from Metallica. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you know what he sounds like. Bush sounds more like, so you're not gonna know who he is. You ever heard of a band called Iced Earth?
No.
Okay, you don't know. Okay, but Bush is kind of like Bruce Dickinson light, Iron Maiden.
Okay.
Yeah. So his vocal styling is in that sort of area, where very soaring and like the notes carry, and whereas Belladonna was thrashy. He just great. There's a lot of rasp in it, that type of stuff. And when they did the albums with Bush, John Bush, they sound different, the songs. And when Belladonna came back after Bush left, and now he's with Armored Saint again, although he almost became the lead singer of Metallica, because James actually lost his voice at one point. And his voice changed after that. He regained the ability to sing, but he couldn't really scream anymore. So Bush was they were thinking of asking Bush to join Metallica as their lead singer, right? So anyway, what was I saying? So they had Belladonna who's with Anthrax now for the last couple of years. They haven't really performed any of the Bush Anthrax songs until they did a live cover of Only a couple of years ago, which is my favorite Anthrax song. And then now Belladonna saying, I want to sing some more of the Bush songs, because I think he was saying I had trained my voice to do it a little more, because it's a different style of singing that he was used to, And to me, that's a band reinventing itself properly. So when they lost their original lead singer, Belladonna, they didn't just get a clone, you know what I mean? They got a new singer, stayed true to this core sound, which is still heavy metal, but did something different, you know what I mean? And then when he left and Belladonna came back, they said, okay, we're going to go back to what we're doing with Joey, but we'll still make new music. But now they want now this fourth phase where now they're starting to mix in some of the stuff we had with John Bush, with Belladonna singing it. That to me is a good reinvention of yourself, that through the decades. So that was something impressive, And I got another one for you. You ever heard of a band called Fear Factory?
No, is that another metal?
No, they are metal, yeah. Fear Factory is Kirk Hammett's favorite heavy metal band. Fear Factory is one of those bands that every album they've ever done is a concept album. They're all about the, I guess, the dark side of the technological ages of humanity. Being enslaved by machines, technology making human things worse. Burton C. Bell, the lead singer of Fear Factory, now his voice is kind of gone now. It's not nowhere near what it was. But for about 15 or 20 years, he was kind of like the heavy metal Meatloaf, like in terms of what he could sing. Meatloaf from Meatloaf the Artist. I'm sure you know what that is. Yeah. So he could sing operatically. He could sing like the heavy rasp. He could do heavy rasp. He had soaring vocal capability, and I would recommend if. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just coughing. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'll say a couple bands I mentioned. I don't know if you're really into heavy stuff or not. But if anyone out there who's listening to this or will listen in the future, or you, Steven, the bands Nightwish and Classic Fear Factory are bands to really check out. And then Winter Sun, if you want a little heavier on the symphonic side. Winter Sun's music is perfect, just perfect. There's no other way to describe it. It's so complex that the band's been around for 20 years. I think they have 15 songs in 20 years. That's how much work Yari puts into it. It takes him 6 years to write 4 songs, because he has to. Each song has over 200 tracks. It's a crazy level of musicianship. You know what I mean? But okay, so that was and the last one, a band that to me should just keep going, even though they're really a legacy act. But U2.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting when we lose one of them.
Yeah, but they're still
interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, I mean they I don't have they even done a new album in recent years? I don't think so. let's
They've
see.
been a legacy act of themselves, like I was saying about the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
They're not really producing anything new. Maybe one song because they did a movie soundtrack or something like
Yeah,
that.
and with these legacy
they
acts,
become a legacy of themselves.
yeah,
They're almost a caricature of themselves at this point.
yeah, I'm okay with legacy bands doing that, right? Like
Yeah,
they
I'm not
had,
taking issue with it.
yeah,
If they're still earning money that way, then God bless them, man.
yeah.
Go
So
for
so
it.
they released 2 albums, Songs of Innocence in 2014 and Songs of Experience in 2017. I can't tell you I could even tell you a song on those albums. Um, but then again, I haven't been listening to a lot of regular rock. Like if I random play music, it's going to be metal or something folk. Those are my things I'll random play on, or Shakira.
Yeah, I don't think I've listened to U2 in decades.
Yeah, so. All right. I mean, I think this is a good hour of talking to music there, Steven. Anything else you want to bring up related, or?
Well, I think we definitely covered it, but I'd be curious as to what your speculation is. I mean, as a generic. That's why I brought up the whole Elvis thing, because this is a fascinating thing. The industry is not going to let these properties die, even if the band goes.
Well,
what's your speculation on what the future of this is going to look like? Because these guys are all aging out. I'm looking at Bono right now, and he's not a young man anymore. He's 62.
Yeah. I don't know if Mattel has an editorial life form. Hey, buddy, how you doing there?
Hey,
I'm talking to Steven Ransom, who's your name's not on there, Steven. I don't know if I could put you. I got next time you're on, I will put a little like a little image over you. I thought you had edited your Discord to show you who you were. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see that I even have that option, but no worries.
There's a way in Discord to make your name show.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I don't remember how to do it, but if you ever see me go into a Discord on someone, let me see if it'll do it. If I turn my camera off, let's see if it does it. Okay, so you see right now, can you see your name on the stream? It's only happening when I mouse over. It pops up to show me. Okay, there's a way to do it though. I will. I'll figure it out for next time. So I was talking to Steven Ransom in Portal. I didn't even notice that. I just assumed it would be a name card like it does when the. I'm still learning my way around this live stream stuff, so we'll figure it out.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning my way around Discord. Not very well, of course, but yeah, I guess I would have to go.
You know what you do?
Administration or something.
Yeah, but I think I should have done something in OBS to show the name of the window with your name on it. You know what I mean? I think that's something I could do. I have to work on that. At least I got this point where I know if someone comes on, I could actually add them in and whatever. The only complications are that if you turned your camera on right now, it would flip us. So you would be where I was, and you would be in Discord. But that would ruin my the way I put you into the live stream.
I gotcha. Yeah, totally gotcha.
Yeah, there's no sort of paying for something like Restream or a Studio IO, whatever. Which I'm not that I'm poor, but I just declared bankruptcy. I got my finances in order finally, and I'm not gonna just throw money at stuff. When I'm a bigger streamer, I might do that. When I have a couple hundred people listening or whatever. For now, it's I'm gonna make do with DIY until I can get big enough to. You know what I'm saying? So
right.
Yeah. But we were talking to follow what we were saying before. The one thing that you run into, and this is, I'll bring up Lord of the Rings and related to this. Under international treaty, copyright runs out on stuff after a certain amount of time. Okay.
Unless it's Disney.
Well, even Disney gets affected by this stuff eventually.
Yeah, I know they get affected, but they figured out several workarounds.
Well, what's happened is that every time this treaty comes up for negotiation, which was the last time about 20 years ago, Disney spends money to get their stuff put into the treaty.
Right.
Now, copyright and trademark aren't the same thing. Trademark never runs out. So let's say Disney runs out of the copyright on Mickey Mouse, they'll still have the trademark on it forever, which means that you can make your own Mickey Mouse stuff, but you can't advertise with Mickey Mouse. That's the difference, So you can write a story about Mickey Mouse, let's say, but you can't advertise it being like with imagery of Mickey Mouse. You can just put your story out there and sell it. So that's kind of the difference between the two.
Well, I know because I track this stuff with industrial design. There was a brief period where anybody could use the McDonald's logo because they hadn't patented the trademark.
Yeah.
And now there's mathematical equations on record patented for the Coca-Cola wave, because people in other parts of the world were starting to use the Coca-Cola wave on their storefront without ever offering Coca-Cola. And people would come to their store looking for Coca-Cola, but they would wind up buying something else. So with trademarks, I am sure that Mickey Mouse is now a mathematical equation that Disney owns the copyrights to. So even if you do it, the image of Mickey Mouse is probably patented on some level.
Well, the image is a trademark. In other words, Mickey Mouse, the character, going public domain means you can write stories about him, but you can't use his image to sell your stories. So you can say I'm selling a Mickey Mouse story, which but you just can't use Disney's Mickey Mouse images in those stories or to sell them. Like you can't say grab the imagery and put on. Like if I write a story about Mickey Mouse going to Never Never Land, which both in public domain.
I just wrote a screenplay speculatively for and this is total fiction. I didn't write a screenplay, but imagine I write a screenplay for Who Framed Roger Rabbit 2.
Yeah.
And Mickey Mouse is in it, and I can't do that because Disney.
Yep.
Even though he's in the original property, there was an original property, they would have to agree to that agreement again to make it all work.
Yeah. So
it's an interesting thing, especially with these notions that we've got video games like Guitar Hero, where these things are being played either as covers, where legacy bands could perform in the metaverse, and who owns the rights to that imagery? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There are other. It used to be where there had to be a separate right to film, a separate right to video, and a separate right to laser media. And now it's all kind of lumped together, I think. I don't know how that all works, but trademarks used to be separated. If you put it out on cassette, one company owned the rights. If you put it out on Laserdisc, a different company owned those rights, and there was a different agreement about it.
Yep. So
it's going to be very interesting to see how this all shakes out, because we're coming to blows over some of these things, and there are so many new platforms. I mean, Napster was the beginning of this entire conversation, if you ask me.
Well, Napster was I guess you would say the attempted corporatization of it. I mean, but it's still Napster's the dirty little secret is that those are two kids who tried to take something that still goes on in the dark web with torrents and other formats, and was going on with Usenet before that, for years before that, and list servers. But they said, if we could maybe make money off this with a centralized server, blah, blah, blah. And they got called for it because, when it comes down to it, I mean, I understand the corporation's point of view. What's the incentive? Like Lars said in the hearing, he said, Metallica has money. We're set for life. But how all these up-and-coming kids, if you're just going to steal their songs, what are they supposed to eat while they're trying to develop themselves? Paraphrasing what he said. So I get both sides of the argument on that.
And that was the whole point of copyright.
Yeah.
As long as you live, your material is copyrighted to your name, so that you could earn. You're the first one to earn profits.
Yeah.
You're the sole profit maker, and that was the whole point of copyright, was to do that. And sheet music was a policeable offense. If you copied somebody's sheet music back in the day, it was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why most theater musicals are still under serious protection because of those regulations. Yeah. Because of the way sheet music is protected.
Yep. It's before it escapes me, by the way, I have Project Gutenberg on the screen. There's a couple other sites like this. Anything in the public domain, they basically put in publishable. Like you could read all these books on Project Gutenberg online. There's a site like that for movies, and there's a lot of
LibriVox is a site, a parallel site to that for audio.
yeah. So there's a lot
public
of
domain being read by public figures.
Yep. Like I said, there's a lot of resources out there where you can get anything in the public domain easily.
I wonder if there's a music site like that. I doubt
Well,
it.
there's one. I can't remember the name of it. I find it every so often. I know I have a link to it somewhere in all my gigantic pile of links.
Yeah, I need to go. I need to comb through my links as well because God, my bookmarks. It's really getting astronomical at this point.
Well, I just did that. I still have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. Issues, organizations.
I can imagine. I mean, okay, we're talking about LibriVox, right?
Yeah.
LibriVox is literally public people reading no longer copyrighted materials, public domain materials, right?
Yep.
I seriously doubt somebody could put up a network of covers of bands and do the same thing, where like they don't carry anything but covers of this music.
Well, it would have to be in the
problems.
public domain. I mean, you have to go back and find out what music is in the public domain already. Like a lot of stuff.
At that point, can somebody do a cover of Mozart and publish it on YouTube? I seriously doubt it.
Oh no, that's already out there. You can get free copies of classical music even from YouTube's own catalog, if I remember correctly. Like when you're a creator, you can go in there. They have a free library of stuff. I haven't looked through all of it, but I thought I saw some classical pieces in there. Matter of fact, let me call up YouTube Studio. We can do this live, Stephen. YouTube. Login, switch account, unbearable. YouTube Studio. So if you're like in YouTube Studio here, and you go down to the audio library, that should be on screen. It'll eventually be on the screen. And there's tons and tons of stuff here, right? So I'm just gonna try like Mozart. It's
Well, do they have? I guess the perfect song to ask would be the one from 2001.
Well, here's a Mozart song in the free. You'll see it on
What
the
was that
screen.
symphony number? The one where they,
Yeah, I don't know all of them. I don't know all of them by number. But here's something by Mozart that's in the free YouTube audio library. You'll see it pop up in a few seconds.
Yeah, I see it.
Yep. And I'm gonna while that's done, I'll search for symphonies and see what's in there. Where's the clear?
So, yeah, this is all very interesting. I am very curious to see what's going to happen because at some point in time, virtual performances are going to become a thing.
So
People are
Beethoven
going to be able to go into the metaverse and perform live for people.
Yep. So I just looked for a symphony. It's Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. You can use it in anything in this YouTube free music can be used in your videos basically. Here's the Ninth Symphony by Beethoven also. And then,
Okay.
Yeah. Question
I
is,
wonder if there's a specific version because I know that some versions by certain orchestras are copyrighted as a separate property. Like their performance of this song is a separate property.
Because this is free, I could actually play it. I mean, it's just classic Beethoven Fifth Symphony.
Right.
Yeah. Why do I think Mickey Mouse the first thing goes into my head? Yeah. But and they can't ding you because it's right out of YouTube's free library, So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I wonder how that works. Do you think is it really open, or do they have to still pay a license fee? Like YouTube itself.
Well, there's a license type. This is the YouTube audio license library. You can use these audio track any of your videos, including videos that you monetize. No attribution is required. So that some people put their music in here, and you just have to give them like an attribution credit. And others just put other stuff just winds up in here, and you don't have to. Like you just play it. That's the difference between the two. I've explored a little bit just to see what's there. I haven't really used too much of it yet. So,
Right.
okay, Stephen.
But that was pretty much it. I mean, this is a fascinating subject because so many things currently are under IP attack, one
Yeah.
could say.
Maybe I'll do for one of the grumpier old men in the future. We'll do talk about copyright and how it affects certain things.
Yeah, I'd like to read some. If you find any documentaries, definitely bump them my way. Like if you come across anything,
Oh yeah,
and I'll do the same for you.
yeah.
It's a fascinating subject because there's a lot of dancing going on, kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, good grief. We got
Yep.
superheroes flip-flopping all over the place. We've got names being changed, backgrounds being changed so much that they're no longer the properties we even recognize. They're in title only, so to speak.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a fascinating subject, and music is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. So, Stephen, just give a rundown what you got going on. I'm not trying to rush. I just want to. Honestly, I'm dead tired. I'm like so.
Yeah, no, I totally got you.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'm going to be on Romans. Let's save the world. No, we're completely telling a fib.
Yeah.
And he's doing vampires versus zombies, a discussion on the iconic imagery of both supernatural beings.
Man.
And that's 5 p.m. Pacific. So that's
I'll be listening there and giving plenty
9
and plenty
o'clock,
of
9 o'clock.
Yep, plenty of
Central, 9 o'clock Eastern.
It's usually eight my time, so 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern.
Yeah,
3-hour difference.
Okay. Anything else you want to advertise there, Stephen, or is that the main thing?
That's it for now. Because I usually do an advertisement over. I got PJ. Let's Talk Geeky every single Saturday. I don't know if he's around this weekend, which means Jim the Viking will be taking over, which is always a fun show.
Yeah.
Because he gets all nervous and quiet because he's like still a little spooked by the mechanism of streaming. Because he's only been in IT for like 20 years and he's still spooked by streaming technology, which is hysterical all on its own.
Yeah.
So it's always a fun show because he gets a little. He's not as chattery as he normally is. But that's PJ Maybe's channel on Saturday. Okay. It's noon Pacific, 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. Eastern.
And and also next time we're together, I will fix the name label thing. What else? So I'll be on This Is Mortar Country on Saturday, most likely. Adam has that's our wrap up for the whole first season of Rings of Prime. So in 2 weeks from tonight, Grumpier Not So Old Men episode 3 will be on. I don't have a topic squared away yet. I have some ideas for it, so I'll let you know ahead of time. Next week, the between week at this time slot, I just do a generic sort of talk about stuff chill stream. I'm not being. Let me know if you want to be on or not, Stephen. Just to give me some preference. Some head.
Of course.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's an open show to you anyway. If you're not, you can always pop on and say, well, whatever.
Right.
But if I know you're coming on, I can prep a few things. So. It's Steve and I are grumpy or not so old men who really want to take naps more than we want to do other stuff.
Well, I'm going on to my second coffee, so I don't know what I'm about to do. I'm going to see if Jedi Bill is doing an insomnia stream or something like that, and see who's around.
Yeah. Well, I got a 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard meeting I got to wake up for. So, but the problem is
you better get some sleep, young man.
Well, the problem is I don't sleep. My body doesn't like to sleep. So, but I'll get a couple hours in. Then I'll probably do the meeting and then sleep for a couple more hours. So,
Well, meditative action is almost as good as sleep. You don't exactly hit REM, but just chilling with your eyes closed and maybe some gentle music or some rain soundtracks are good to relax the brain, so that at least you're rejuvenated somewhat.
My brain prefers actual sleep, not meditation. Anyway, thanks to anyone who's listening. Thanks for coming on, Stephen. I hit 60. Hopefully I'll hit maybe 100 by the end of the year. Who knows? We'll see. But it's all the journey,
That's right.
Yep. So stay safe, avoid nuclear war, getting hit by nuclear war. or killed in gang violence if you live in the inner city now. Danger, danger, danger. Um, people. I've read just as I go out here. I read something where someone got taken out for a coffee. They took the dude out because they wanted his coffee. So, anyway,
Yeah, well,
live
yeah,
long and prosper, everyone.